Which Nike Supershoe is the right one for you? The record-holding Alphafly 3 or the brand new Vaporfly 4? Let's break it down. What's up everybody, I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and you're watching Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Today, like I said, we're comparing Nike's latest super shoe options, and if it's your first time watching one of these videos, you may notice some timestamps below. Feel free to jump around to the various parts of this comparison, but if you do so, I would sure appreciate if you come back and watch the full thing when you get a second, as I put a lot of time and effort into these videos. And if you've been a viewer for a while, but for whatever reason you've chosen not to subscribe, please consider hitting that subscribe button today and turn on notifications so you get notified every time I drop a new video, which is typically Monday through Friday. Now, just to kick us off, some quick disclaimers and disclosures. I was provided the Vaporfly 4 for free directly from Nike for the purpose of review. That being said, I'm not being paid. I'm not obligated to actually include the shoe in any content. They don't know I'm making this video. They don't give me talk points, talking tracks. No one watches the videos beforehand, and all thoughts are entirely my own. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about the intended use of these two shoes. Now, it's kind of been an interesting debate with super shoes. A lot of companies are coming out with kind of like a premium super shoe option, and that's really what the Alphafly introduction was. But with that, it kind of leaves a gap with the original super shoes from each lineup. Like, what is the Vaporfly supposed to be for? Is it just a different option? Is it depending on stride type? Like, what does that actually look like? And with the introduction of the Vaporfly 4, Nike was a little bit more clear and added a little bit more direction that the Alphafly is the premium marathon option. Meanwhile, the Vaporfly is a shoe that you can use to basically race down or up in, and its sweet spot might actually be the half marathon. So that's how we're going to be discussing the two shoes today. Just know that you can definitely still race a marathon or anything below it in either of these shoes if you choose so. Now, from a price standpoint, the Vaporfly 4 comes in at $260. Meanwhile, the Alphafly comes in at $285. So the price points obviously are going to reflect kind of the more premium nature of the Alphafly, but $260 is no joke still, and really for super shoes, you're probably going to see anything like $250 plus. Most super shoes are coming in closer to that $300 range, to the point where when the Alphafly does update to the fourth version, I fully expect it to be about $300. Now, from a spec standpoint, the Vaporfly 4 comes in at 5.9 ounces, which is 167 grams. Meanwhile, the Alphafly 3 comes in at 7 ounces, which is 198 grams. Then when you look at the stack heights, the Vaporfly has 36 in the heel, 30 in the forefoot for a 6mm drop, and the Alphafly has 40 in the heel, 32 in the forefoot for a 8mm drop. So while you can race, again, different distances in different drops, different amounts of cushion, like that doesn't necessarily dictate what the shoe is for. The Vaporfly actually used to be a little bit higher stack, and in the fourth version, they're cutting it down a little bit. And I do feel like that is a signal that, again, it's supposed to be able to be a little bit more nimble and race down. Meanwhile, with the Alphafly, you have a lot of different cushioning underfoot, and we'll talk about that in the midsole section, but it really is supposed to give you a little bit more cushion and support underfoot. With that, you're maybe sacrificing a little bit of weight, but again, the marathon is obviously going to be slower than the other races that you may be doing, and so you would expect to have maybe a slightly heavier shoe for the longer race because you don't need to be quite as quick, though obviously these shoes are both very fast. Now, from a fit standpoint, these shoes do fit a little bit different. So the Vaporfly, I would say, fits narrow throughout. Narrow heel, narrow midfoot, narrow toe box. True to size lengthwise, but just narrow overall, to the point where some people may say, hey, it's worth half sizing up because they do fit so snug. But I do think for me, I wouldn't from a length perspective, but I actually might consider an 11 over my 10.5 just because that toe box is narrow and I did notice that. So maybe having a little bit of extra length, which gives the hose a little bit more room to breathe, may not be the worst thing in the world. It'll just come down to preference. Now with the Alphafly, I would say same thing, true to size lengthwise. I would say the toe box is a little bit more standard fit. I don't know if I'd call it necessarily full wide. The ankle itself, or the heel itself, is going to be a little bit more wide, and then that midfoot is actually fairly snug. So between the two, honestly, the Alphafly feels incredibly roomy compared to the Vaporfly, but the Alphafly still is snug through that midfoot, and wide foot runners may struggle with it overall. Now moving to the uppers, the new Vaporfly has a racing engineered mesh, so it's going to be a very, very lightweight and breathable mesh. It's not going to be quite as kind of airy maybe as the Atom Knit though over in the Alphafly, where you can basically see through the shoe as a whole. Now the Vaporfly has a little bit more of a like traditional construction though, even when compared to like the Flyknit and the Vaporfly 3, which was a lot more like kind of wholly, I guess you could say, but there's a lot more structure. So you have kind of that central lacing system as opposed to the lacing system kind of to the side, which the Vaporfly did in various models. You do have like a more structured heel counter. You have legitimate like eyelets that are reinforced there. So like this is really more of a traditional upper, but still very, very breathable, still very, very lightweight. The tongue is not gusseted, but you get really, really good lockdown in the shoe, I think just because it is so narrow, and then this material does hug your feet pretty good. And then you kind of have that signature Vaporfly cushion strip there in the heel, which is just enough cushion to basically prevent hopeful like Achilles rubbing and discomfort, but not enough to weigh down the shoe. Now the Atom Knit upper of the Alphafly is going to be a little bit more sock-like, but you really only get that stretch there in the like that tongue area. So you can see it's kind of got that knit tongue there. It's a little bit more robust. You do have some lighter kind of cushion there in the heel as well. And the heel counter is structured there at the bottom, but you can see there at the top, it will fully collapse down if you fold it. So it really feels more like kind of a booty style upper, but it has really, really good lockdown, and there's not extra like overly stretchy areas which are going to cause shifting in the shoe. So neither of these shoes I struggled with lockdown. Both of them were really, really good from that lockdown perspective. And then breathability, again, top notch on both. Personally, I do think I like the overall comfort of the Alphafly, but I do worry that maybe that durability, like if you snagged it on something, you know, those eyelets maybe could fray or something along those lines. But overall, it is a more comfortable, more breathable experience. Moving to the midsoles, this is where the shoes tend to deviate a little bit more. So in the Vaporfly, you have that classic Zoom X foam, which is a PEBA based foam, and then you have the carbon fiber fly plate in the shoe. And just like feeling these two PEBA foams, or I should say, in the Alphafly, you have a Zoom X foam kind of throughout the entirety of the shoe. You have that carbon fiber fly plate, and then you have these two Zoom Air units here in the forefoot. And the Zoom X tuning, maybe we'll call it, or the Zoom X in the Alphafly 3 does seem to be softer and slightly squishier than the Zoom X in the 4. Now, I don't know if that's because of the geometry of the shoe. I don't know if that's because there's actually more of it underfoot, but the Zoom X foam in the Vaporfly 3 or the Vaporfly 4, it is a little bit firmer overall, even than like the Vaporfly 3, which I felt like was a very bouncy shoe. And when compared to the Alphafly with kind of those Zoom Air units there in the forefoot, I would say like the two sensations are very, very different on foot, not just from a weight perspective, but from like that heel to toe transition, where that Alphafly kind of like forefoot area, it feels like wide and accommodating, and you can kind of feel it. The shoe is almost like punchy is how I explain it. So, you know, you really kind of compress hard on that forefoot and you launch off the ground in a like bounding motion, right? Whenever someone is wearing the Alphaflys in a race, you hear them, like they are loud. It sounds like almost like a horse galloping, because there is just that punch with each stride. Meanwhile, though, the Vaporfly is going to be a little bit more snappy and a little bit more kind of nimble overall in stride, right? I mean, you have a 6mm drop versus an 8mm drop, so that's something else to consider. But really, like, to me, if you are someone who wants a lot more of that bounce and cushion and punch underfoot, the Alphafly is probably the way to go, versus like the Vaporfly is going to be just a little bit more smooth. And I actually ran in these shoes back to back. So I like ran 4 miles in the Alphafly, then 4 miles in the Vaporfly at similar paces. And it was noticeable kind of the weight difference even in the two shoes and just how they felt overall. Now, something else to consider though is the Vaporfly platform is a lot narrower in my opinion than the Alphafly platform, as you can see. So what that means is if you have stability needs, frankly, neither of these shoes are really for you. But I do think that the narrow overall base of the Vaporfly is going to cause them to be a little bit more unstable for those who are kind of borderline. And so if you're needing that extra support, that's where the Alphafly may come in handy. Again, not a stability shoe, but definitely, in my opinion, more stable than the Vaporfly. Now moving to the outsoles, you have a blown rubber outsole on the Vaporfly 4, and I've only taken this out for about 3 sessions. I have about 20 plus miles on the shoe, and so far I haven't had any issues with the outsole, but I haven't had a ton of luck, to be honest, with blown rubbers. They have been a little bit slick for me on wetter surfaces, so I do worry about that a little bit. Meanwhile, the Alphafly has that fast shot outsole, which has really good good coverage there in the forefoot, just like the Vaporfly, and then both of them have kind of these pads there in the back. And the Alphafly, I didn't have any slipping or any issues. I have well over 50 miles on these shoes, and for the most part, the outsole is holding up well. Now, both of these shoes, something to be potentially concerned about though, is that they have a lot of exposed foam there in that midfoot area, and that foam can wear away really, really quickly. Now, 50 plus miles again on the Alphaflys, they're not deteriorating as much as some other people's that I've seen. Maybe I've been fortunate that I haven't run in like bad weather in them very much. I mean, they're still fairly clean despite having 50 plus miles on them. But again, just something to note that those foams may deteriorate there in the midfoot area, and you can see kind of that creasing and just that natural wear and tear on the bottom of the shoe. Now, as far as my pick between these two shoes, I probably would go, I mean, it depends on the distance. The Alphafly is a shoe that I really, really enjoy running in. It doesn't love me back. And I think I mentioned this in the full review that I did of the shoe a while back at this point, but my calves get incredibly tight just with how the Alphafly feels underfoot. And I know not everyone has that experience. Obviously, it holds some crazy records in the shoe. I know a lot of people really enjoy running and racing in the shoe, and I wish I could because I think it's a very fun shoe. I kind of cap out though, to be honest, on the shoe. I mean, I've run a 20 miler in it, but anytime, like if I'm really, really pushing pace, like it seems to strain my calf and Achilles quite a bit. So it just doesn't quite agree with my stride. For that reason, I have to go Vaporfly, even though I do think maybe the Alphafly is the more interesting or fun of the two. The Vaporfly though, what I really do like is the lightweightness. Like again, I ran 4 miles in it, in the Alphafly, then 4 in the Vaporfly back to back. And my stride just works better with that 6mm drop, with that lightweight feel. But if you watch my comparison of the Vaporfly 3 versus Vaporfly 4 from last week, I do prefer the Vaporfly 3. So the Vaporfly 4, just something about the foam and how they tuned it is just not my favorite. I feel like it's just a little bit firmer than I like for this kind of nimble package. So I will be curious to see how the Alphafly 4, whenever that does come out, kind of is different and how that feels, because maybe I'll be transitioning over to the Alphafly as far as my preference, but at least for the last few years, the Vaporfly was my go-to, and I really like it more for those shorter, faster efforts though. So like when I go and I'm trying to run like a 5K PR, frankly, a lot of time I'm choosing the Vaporfly instead of something else because it's kind of tried and true at that distance for me. But with the introduction of the Streakfly 2, that's another variable that I kind of need to consider. I hope to be able to review that shoe, so we'll kind of see if I can fit it into my rotation and grab a pair. But Nike is really doing some really cool things from the racing perspective, so excited to see, again, what an Alphafly update is going to look like, and to just see how people like the Vaporfly 4 overall. I should have enough review miles on the shoe by the end of next week, so expect a full review on the Vaporfly 4 next week, where I'll break down kind of my overall thoughts on the shoe so far. Now, just some final thoughts. Overall, I think Nike is really, really smart with how they are finally positioning the Vaporfly versus the Alphafly. There's a lot of confusion out there with other brands, with ASICS having just announced 3 new super shoes coming to market in July, with, you know, Saucony having the Pro and Elite lines, with On has the Cloudboom Strike, but also the Cloudboom Echo, right? Are we going to see an Echo 4? Kind of what's going on there? Like, there's just a lot of confusion by having multiple super shoe lines, especially when there's not a clear distinction between like what each one is for. Now, with Nike saying like, hey, the Vaporfly is now kind of half marathon also, then we get a little bit more distinction, with the Streakfly being more of your 5K shoe. You've got the Vaporfly being your 10K half marathon, and then the Alphafly being your marathon. You know, to be fair, another brand that had done this already, which was really nice to see, was the New Balance line, right, with the Pacer also kind of being your 5K, 10K specialty shoe. So again, I'll be curious to see if other brands follow suit, if they're going to be pushing their original super shoe models more towards that 5K to half marathon distance, and have their premium ones be more marathon focused. But no matter what, it's a really, really exciting time for running shoes. Lots of really cool tech, lots of really cool shoes coming out, and I can't wait to continue to be able to test more and more. So if you watched this far, I sure appreciate you. Please take a second. Let me know in the comments what you thought, what I could be doing better, and to just improve these videos and make them more educational, more fun, more interesting for each and every one of you. And let me know if there's other comparisons that you'd like to see in the comments below. And lastly, we'll finish out with a question, which is your preferred line, the Vaporfly or the Alphafly? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks, everybody.